Taksim, her yer direniş. Tayyip istifa!
Tayyip istifa! Tayyip istifa!
Tayyip istifa!
We see a tightening of the belts and working people and poor people in countries all over the world having to suffer for the economic crisis. We see more and more attacks on civil liberties all over the world, in this country included, and in Turkey, the ruling party, and in Tunisia even, clamping down on more civil liberties and trying to actually lower the living standards of regular people. This is happening in Europe too, and it's happening here. This is a global struggle. This tension has been boiling for years. This is the situation we're in. We have a responsibility to support these rebellions wherever they happen across the world, and a responsibility here as well to build our own movement or rebuild another Occupy of sorts, a Turkish rebellion, what have you, but a fight against the austerity programs and the fight against the attacks on civil liberties that have been amping up for years now. This is our task. I hope you're all with us.
In the last couple of years, what we have seen is people all around the world fighting back for very, very similar things. As country after country, no matter what, whether they call themselves democracies or dictatorships, no matter what the leadership calls itself, what we found is that the interests that organize those countries are run for the very, very rich of those countries and not in the interests of ordinary people. That is true in the United States, it was true in Egypt, it is true in Greece, it is definitely true in Turkey as well. And that's the thing that I think unites all of us. I was part of Occupy Austin. I know several of you out here were. We were inspired by the protests taking place at the time in Egypt, and now we have the heroic resistance of the brothers and sisters in Turkey who are fighting back for very, very similar things, which is the right to run their country in their interests, free of both military, free of governmental, free of corporate rule, and are arguing in favor of democracy. It's been incredibly inspiring to watch the last several weeks what people have been able to do, ordinary people have been able to do, which is make people in power who have thought for very long that their power was unshakable tremble in their boots to realize that there is a global movement that can challenge them very, very easily. And that's what's been inspiring. Turkey is not simply, one of the more modern countries in the Muslim world. It's actually been held up as the economic darling of the West for the last decade. Turkey was supposed to be the place where they figured out how to do economic liberalization, how they brought it closer to Europe, how they did, democratic reforms. This was supposed to be the model that Turkey held for the rest of the Muslim world. What we have seen is that the heart of that model was an absolute corruption that has seeped into every aspect of life, even such that the man who was supposed to be in favor of Palestinians last year, if you remember the Turkish flotilla that went into the Marmara, is now happy to accept Israeli guns and bullets and training to crack down on Turkish protesters. The man who was supposed to be in favor of democracy now siding up with anti-democratic regimes all throughout the Middle East. Erdogan has not only Turkish blood on his hands, but he has that blood of democratic fighters all over the Middle East on his hands as well.
He's an idiot.
We live in a state that's run by an idiot as well. Rick Perry has been recently compared to Tayyip Erdogan in very, very similar ways. Rick Perry is just as religious when he wants to be as Tayyip Erdogan is. Rick Perry is just as brutal when it comes to social policies as Tayyip Erdogan wants to be. Rick Perry is just as militaristic as Tayyip Erdogan. And in fact, many ways, Turkey and Texas have that in common. And that's, I think, a great way to maybe continue the spirit of this protest, which is to realize that it's not simply, we're not simply here because we are inspired and stand in solidarity with the people in Turkey. It's because we know that their fight is our fight here in Texas as well. That every tear gas canister that has been used against protesters in Turkey was built here in the U.S.A. And there's one thing that I should add about the tear gas canisters. I don't know if you all know this, but people in Taksim have been reporting, and in Ankara have been reporting that when the tear gas canisters land, people pick them up. And what they found is that the expiration dates on all of them have been marked out. And that's because when tear gas expires, it becomes toxic, and that's the reason why people are having the symptoms that they are having now, is that they're using expired tear gas on their own population. We need to ask ourselves, what kind of regime does things like that? What kind of regime attacks its own people with essentially low-grade chemical warfare? In any other context, the United States is quick to point out that Saddam Hussein used chemical weapons against his own people, that other, Mubarak used chemical weapons against his own people. Any other regime, they're happy to point this out. But this time, they're afraid to point it out. And the reason is, it's their chemical warfare that Erdogan is using. And that's, I think, a thing that we need to bring home here as well, which is that the interests of the United States have only been to meddle in the affairs of country after country in the Middle East. The best thing that we can do is build as much solidarity as we can so that the folks in Turkey know that America does not represent simply the tear gas canisters that are used against them. It represents the people here who stand in solidarity with them, who respect their fight, who understand that theirs is not only a heroic fight, but one that is at the heart of every major social struggle that is taking place around the world today. That's a reason to be inspired and out here. So thank you everybody for coming out here.